I'm the guy who always had the rational explanation for UFOs or UAPs. Weather balloon, classified drone, bad optics. And the Pentagon just launched a website, war.gov/UFO, and dropped 162 declassified files for anyone to read. I've been staring at them for 2 days. I'm running out of rational explanations, so we need to talk about UFOs. Last Friday, the US government did something it's been promising and deferring for decades. The Pentagon dropped 162 declassified files on UAPs, videos, photographs, internal military documents, and put them online for anyone to read. You can go to war.gov right now and watch infrared footage of objects making 90-degree turns at 80 miles per hour. You can look at an Apollo 17 photograph showing 3 lights in a triangular formation above the lunar surface, flagged by the DoD as an unresolved case. You can read memos from the Western U.S. describing, in the flat bureaucratic language of official incident reports, orbs that launched other orbs. So the Trump administration even gave it an acronym, PURSUE, for Presidential Unsealing and Reporting System for UAP encounters. So something has been bothering me for weeks, and this release just made it more complicated to ignore. Hey friends, Wes O'Donnell here. I'm a military technology and defense analyst, pro-Ukraine, hates authoritarian regimes, and if you're a regular viewer, welcome back. You are looking great. I hope somebody has told you that today. If you're new here, you should know that I'm a skeptic on the UAP topic. Like Carl Sagan once said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. That is still my default, but I'm open to changing my mind if the evidence leads me there. I know that's a radical position these days, changing one's mind that is, but that's how science works. So I'm making this video because I've covered enough of the national security space to know when something deserves more than a dismissive shrug, and also when it deserves more than breathless speculation. Well, this topic gets both extremes applied to it constantly, and I want to try something different. Here's my 99-1 breakdown. Let me give you my honest working model for UAP reports. I believe roughly 90% of sightings are misidentification, like bad optics, atmospheric anomalies, consumer drones, sensor artifacts, and the brain doing exactly what it always does, filling 3 seconds of genuine uncertainty with full certainty. Human pattern recognition is a marvel and a disaster simultaneously. Then there's the 9%, and that is probably classified human technology. Governments have been flying strange things in secret for decades and then performing theatrical surprise when someone notices. The F-117 existed as a rumor for years. So did the SR-71. The US has been running the black budget, which is unitemized classified spending on advanced military technology and intelligence programs, since at least 1947. The numbers are staggering. Tens of billions per year, every year, for generations of aerospace development. That the public never sees and isn't supposed to. When I was in the Air Force, I had a brief conversation with a visiting Lockheed Skunk Works employee. When I jokingly asked what he was working on, he went really serious, and he said, "Wes, the only thing I can tell you is that Star Wars isn't just a movie." I don't think he was talking about lightsabers. I think he was talking about capability gaps the public has no framework for. The Pentagon and the CIA also have a documented history of weaponizing the UFO phenomenon itself. A 1997 New York Times report confirmed that the Air Force and CIA actively promoted UFO explanations to obscure sightings of the U-2 and the SR-71 spy planes during the Cold War. Letting the public believe they'd seen a flying saucer was cleaner than admitting a classified reconnaissance asset had been spotted. After all, in an open society where information control is hard, disinformation is the next best thing. So when something strange shows up in a sanitized military training environment, as in no armed aircraft, cleared space, no hostile contact expected, the first question worth asking is, whose test is this? But that's just the 90% and the 9%. That leaves the pesky f***ing 1%. These are the cases with multiple trained observers, multiple independent sensors, official interest, and are genuinely unexplainable with modern technology. That slice is small, but that's the slice that gets under my skin. There's also a piece of this that Congressman Tim Burkett has been raising that I think deserves a fair hearing. His core argument isn't that aliens are real, it's that some of the people reporting these incidents are among the most credentialed observers on the planet, with nothing to gain and a great deal of credibility to lose by going public. He also argues that when members of Congress try to access relevant material, they run into resistance, not just classification barriers, active resistance. And his suspicion is that some of this material has been pushed into the contractor space where congressional oversight and freedom of information requests have less traction. He even said that multiple presidents have been told they don't have the need to know. Now, that doesn't prove the phenomenon is non-human. It does suggest this secrecy culture around this subject is its own story, and maybe its own scandal. So here's what we already know. The encounters worth taking seriously aren't blurry cell phone videos from a parking lot. They look like this. Off the Baja Coast in 2004, the USS Nimitz carrier group was in the middle of a major radar and sensor upgrade, a cooperative engagement capability that fused sensor data from every ship and aircraft in the strike group into a single real-time combat picture. It was, by design, an ideal test environment. And during that testing, something showed up that the system couldn't account for. Highly trained naval aviators, crew members aboard the Ticonderoga-class cruiser USS Princeton, and observers on an E-2C Hawkeye all reported the same object. The footage is well documented. The witnesses are credentialed. The object appeared to accelerate, stop, and turn at performance envelopes that no known propulsion system can achieve. The East Coast encounters in 2014 and 2015 followed the same pattern. Trained pilots, multiple sensor types, no prosaic explanation that survives scrutiny. Now, I've spent time around military aviation. I'm a veteran of the U.S. Army and the U.S. Air Force. I know how much of what gets reported as strange has an ordinary explanation. The Nimitz case, though, doesn't resolve that cleanly. Neither do the East Coast incidents. And now there's this. An Apollo 17 photograph showing 3 lights visible above the lunar terrain, now officially flagged by the Department of Defense as an unresolved case. A 1969 Apollo 12 image depicts a glowing object on the horizon, and files label it unidentified phenomena. The astronauts' own working theory was chunks of ice. Maybe that's right, but chunks of ice don't show up in triangular formation, and the government just officially stamped these images unresolved and handed them to the public. That's not nothing. There's also this. The U.S. Air Force has historically deployed its Office of Special Investigations, the OSI, a hybrid intelligence and counterintelligence unit modeled after the FBI to manage information after credible sightings. That's not a conspiracy theory. It's a documented function of how sensitive information gets contained in an open society. When you understand what Air Force OSI does, Men in Black stop sounding like folklore and start sounding like a security protocol. So I've not told anyone about this except my wife. I didn't report it at the time, and I've carried this with me for years. But when I was in the Air Force, I saw something in the sky that I still can't explain. In 2006, we were flying from Manta, Ecuador to Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma City on the E-3 Sentry AWACS. We were not operating the radar at the time. For all intents and purposes, it was effectively a passenger flight. But while we were over the Gulf of Mexico, I remember looking out the window porthole, not a lot of windows on the Sentry, and I saw what I can only describe as a cigar-shaped something off the port wing, probably 300 meters away. It seemed to be flying in formation with us. And before I could grab anyone to have a look and make sure I wasn't losing my mind, it shot straight down toward the water at an impossible speed where I lost sight of it. Now, I'm not saying I saw an alien. I'm saying I saw something that didn't make sense to me then, and it still doesn't make sense to me now, after years spent around military aviation, sensor systems, and the full catalog of ways that human perception generates false certainty. So I think there's life elsewhere in the universe. It is statistically close to certain. The universe is enormous, and it's old, and it's structured in ways that make chemistry and biology look like natural outcomes rather than accidents. The idea that Earth produced the only life that ever crawled out of the mud and started asking philosophical questions would be one of the most improbable facts in the history of science. The harder question, the one I'm genuinely struggling with, is whether any of that life has ever been here. That's a bigger claim. It needs better evidence, not blurry footage. And yet, that 1%, truly unexplained stuff that just sits there, not enough to support the biggest theory, too much to dismiss cleanly, it doesn't resolve. It just stays open, and it really bothers me. So here's where I actually land. My threshold is still high, and I want it to stay high. Pilot testimony alone doesn't move me, but radar, infrared, and visual confirmation stacking on the same object in the same event, with no prosaic explanation surviving scrutiny, that gets interesting. Recovered material that can't be attributed to any known program would definitely do it for me. Declassified files showing that officials believed in their actual words that they were dealing with something non-human, that would force me to reassess my life. What doesn't move me is domain enthusiasm. The fact that someone is certain doesn't make them right. Some of the most credentialed people in aviation history have been badly wrong about what they saw. Look at Amelia Earhart. But I'd be lying if I said my confidence that all of this is easily explained hasn't gotten a little less absolute lately. It feels like we're building towards something, and last week it started. Whether what arrived is real transparency or the most elaborately produced shrug in the history of government communications is a question worth asking. Maybe disclosure? Maybe another carefully managed drip of information designed to generate attention without revealing anything. I genuinely don't know which. So I want to know where your threshold is. What would actually move you off your current position? Not what do you believe? What would change your mind in either direction? Drop it in the comments. I'll read them. Otherwise, subscribing is the best free way to support my channel on military technology. And as always, the truth is out there. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. Crimea is Ukraine.